They messed up. They know it now. Know it with certainty that won't let them sleep. Know it with clarity that arrives too late. Know it with understanding that feels like punishment, because understanding comes after the loss instead of before it. They see it all now. See how they took you for granted. See how their patterns pushed you away. See how their defended position destroyed something valuable. See how their emotional unavailability cost them the one person whose availability was creating space for them to heal. See how their withdrawal drove away the one person whose presence was making their defended life sustainable. They messed up, rejected someone who was accepting them, pushed away someone who was patient, created distance from someone who was trying to be close, chose their defended comfort over partnership with someone exceptional. And now they see it. See what they did. See what they lost. See what they destroyed through patterns they could have changed if they'd been willing to do the work. The realization has arrived with devastating clarity that makes them want to reach out, want to apologize, want to explain that they understand now, want to fix what they broke, want to restore what their patterns destroyed. They want to tell you, they get it now. Get what you were providing. Get what you were sacrificing. Get what they were taking for granted. They want you to know the realization has occurred, that they're suffering, that they're sorry, that they finally understand. But they can't tell you any of this, can't reach out, can't apologize, can't explain their realization, because you're silent, completely silent. Silent in ways that communicate finality they've never experienced from you before. Silent in ways that prove you're actually done, actually gone, actually choosing yourself over them. Your silence is impenetrable, is boundary they can't cross, is wall they can't climb, is statement that can't be argued with or negotiated around. And your silence, your complete unavailability after they've realized they messed up, hurts them in ways that are specific, devastating, permanent. Hurts them more than your pursuing ever reached them. Hurts them more than your words ever impacted them. Hurts them more than your presence ever affected them. Your silence after their realization is destroying them in ways they weren't prepared for and can't manage. Understanding why your silence hurts them so deeply reveals what your presence was preventing, why silence communicates what words never could, what the pain of your silence might teach them, and why maintaining your silence despite their suffering is essential for both people's healing, even though only one person can currently see why the silence serves them both. The 3 reasons your silence hurts them, specifically. After realization, why the timing makes the pain unbearable. The avoidance realization that they messed up creates specific pain, but that pain becomes unbearable when combined with your complete silence that prevents them from acting on the realization. Reason 1, they finally want to reach out and can't. The desire to connect arriving simultaneously with your complete unavailability creates unbearable frustration. Throughout relationship, they didn't want to reach out, didn't want to connect deeply, didn't want to be vulnerable. The not wanting made your pursuing painful to them, made your reaching feel like pressure, made your desire for connection feel like demand they couldn't meet. But now, after realizing they messed up, after seeing what they lost, after understanding what you were, they want to reach out, want it desperately, want to tell you they understand, want to apologize, want to explain the realization, want to see if there's any possibility of restoration. The wanting has finally arrived, but it's arrived at the exact moment when reaching out is impossible, because you're silent, completely silent, not just not initiating contact, actively unavailable in ways that communicate any attempt to reach out will be met with continued silence. They want to reach out. Your silence makes reaching out impossible, or at least makes it clear that reaching out will produce no response. This timing is what creates unbearable frustration. The desire to connect and the impossibility of connecting arriving simultaneously. Wanting something exactly when it becomes unavailable. Finally, being ready to do what you always wanted. Reach out, connect, be vulnerable, at the exact moment when you're no longer available to receive what you always wanted. The frustration is punishment, is them experiencing wanting what they couldn't give you while you were available, at the exact moment when you're no longer available to receive what they're finally wanting to give. The timing of their wanting and your unavailability creates pain that feels like cosmic justice. They're experiencing the desire they couldn't access during relationship at the moment when acting on that desire is impossible because you're gone. Reason 2, your silence proves they actually lost you, eliminating the fantasy that you're still accessible when they're ready. During relationship and even immediately after ending, they operated on assumption you're accessible. Maybe not immediately. Maybe you need space. Maybe you need time, but fundamentally accessible, available when they're ready, waiting for them to be ready to reach out. This assumption made the loss feel manageable, feel temporary, feel reversible when they got their internal state sorted. But your silence destroys the assumption, proves through its permanence that you're not accessible, not waiting, not available when they're ready. You're gone in ways that aren't reversible through them finally being ready to reach out. Your silence is proof that the loss is real, that you're actually gone, that they actually destroyed something that won't be restored just because they now understand what they destroyed. The proof is what makes the pain unbearable, because as long as they could maintain fantasy that you're still accessible, the loss felt temporary, felt like something they could address when ready. But your silence eliminates the fantasy, forces them to acknowledge the loss is permanent, that you're not coming back, that their realization arrived too late. The acknowledgement they're being forced into through your silence is devastating, is them having to accept that understanding now doesn't restore what not understanding destroyed, that seeing clearly now doesn't undo the damage created by not seeing clearly then, that finally being ready doesn't mean you're still available to receive their readiness. Your silence is forcing them to accept permanent loss. The acceptance is unbearable because it means their realization, however genuine, however profound, changes nothing about the permanent ending your silence represents. Reason 3, the silence communicates your strength, forcing them to recognize your person who enforces boundaries, making their loss more painful through recognizing what they lost. Your silence isn't just absence, it's communication, is statement about who you are, statement they couldn't see clearly during relationship, but can see now through the silence. Your silence communicates your person who enforces boundaries, person who chooses yourself when relationship isn't serving you, person who has strength to maintain boundaries despite difficulty, person who doesn't break under the pain of separation if breaking would mean betraying yourself, person who values yourself enough to stay gone from relationship that wasn't honoring your value. All of this is communicated through the silence, through your refusal to break the silence despite whatever you might be feeling, through your maintenance of boundary despite their realization that might make you want to soften. Your silence reveals your strength, and recognizing your strength makes the loss more painful, because they're not just losing someone who loved them, they're losing someone who has rare strength, rare capacity to choose themselves, rare ability to enforce boundaries. They took you for granted while they had you. Your silence is proving you're not person who can be taken for granted. Your person who leaves when taken for granted and stays gone through strength most people don't possess. The recognition of what they lost, not just loving person, but strong person, makes the pain worse, makes them see that the loss isn't just losing relationship, is losing person of exceptional quality. Person whose strength your silence is demonstrating in ways your presence never demonstrated as clearly. They're recognizing your worth exactly when your worth is what they can't access anymore. The recognition through your silence makes the loss unbearable because it proves they lost someone exceptional, and the exceptional nature is what makes them impossible to replace. What your silence is teaching, that your words never could, the education that only absence provides. The avoidance suffering from your silence is educational. Understanding what your silence teaches helps you see why maintaining it serves them even though it feels cruel. Your silence teaches that boundaries are real, that stated consequences will be enforced, destroying their assumption that consequences were negotiable. Throughout relationship, you stated boundaries, said what you needed, communicated what you couldn't accept indefinitely, expressed consequences, said you'd leave if patterns persisted, but stating and enforcing are different. You stated boundaries while staying, communicated needs while accepting those needs not being met, expressed consequences while not implementing them when patterns persisted. The gap between stated and enforced taught them boundaries aren't real, are just words, are negotiable, can be violated without actual consequence. This teaching made your boundaries meaningless to them, made your needs ignorable, made your stated consequences dismissible because consequences were threatened but never implemented. But your silence is teaching different lesson. Teaching that boundaries are real, that stated consequences will be enforced, that you saying you'd leave if patterns persisted was an empty threat, was real boundary that would be enforced when violated. Your silence is the enforcement. Is you implementing the consequence you stated? Is you proving through action that your words weren't negotiable? The teaching is painful for them. Is them discovering that boundaries they violated because they assumed violations had no real consequence actually did have real consequence. The consequence arrived, is permanent. Is your silence that won't be broken. The teaching through silence is more effective than any teaching through words could be, because words can be dismissed. Silence can't be dismissed. Words create dialogue where they can negotiate. Silence creates finality that can't be negotiated. Your silence is teaching them their assumption was wrong. Boundaries are real. Consequences are real. Violations produce permanent loss. The lesson learned through your silence is lesson they couldn't learn through your words because words without enforcement taught opposite lesson, that words are meaningless and consequences are empty threats. Your silence teaches that taking people for granted produces permanent loss. Experiencing the loss teaches what your presence never taught about your value. During relationship, they took you for granted, took your presence for granted, took your patience for granted, took your understanding for granted, took everything you provided for granted because you providing it consistently made it seem guaranteed, made it seem like permanent feature that didn't require appreciation or reciprocation. Your presence while being taken for granted couldn't teach them not to take you for granted. Your presence just confirmed taking you for granted was safe because you stayed despite being taken for granted. But your silence is teaching different lesson, teaching that taking people for granted produces permanent loss, that your presence wasn't guaranteed, that your patience had limits, that your understanding didn't mean you'd accept being taken for granted indefinitely. Your silence is consequence of the taking for granted, is proof that taking you for granted cost them you. The teaching is brutal, is them learning through losing you that you were valuable and shouldn't have been taken for granted. Is them understanding, through your absence, what your presence was worth? Is them recognizing too late that what seemed guaranteed was actually choice you were making, and choice could be revoked when you were taken for granted too thoroughly for too long? The lesson learned through silence is lesson your presence couldn't teach. Your presence, while being taken for granted, just taught them taking you for granted was sustainable. Your silence teaches taking you for granted was the mistake that cost them everything. The teaching through loss is more effective than teaching through words ever was, because loss makes value visible in ways possession made value invisible. Your silence teaches that transformation must be chosen before loss, not motivated by loss, proving that crisis-driven change comes too late. The avoidant has realized they messed up, has recognized they need to change, might even be willing now to do the therapeutic work they wouldn't do during relationship. The realization and willingness are real, are genuine responses to the pain of losing you. But your silence is teaching. Transformation must be chosen before loss. Can't be motivated by loss and expect loss to be reversed. They're willing to change now, after losing you. But your silence teaches that after is too late. Change needed to happen before, needed to be chosen while you were still there, needed to be pursued because they recognized their patterns were harming you, not because losing you created crisis that made change feel necessary. The teaching is harsh. Is them learning that crisis-driven change doesn't restore what was lost before the crisis. That being willing to change after you're gone doesn't mean you'll return because they're willing. That transformation motivated by loss comes too late to benefit the relationship that the lack of transformation destroyed. Your silence enforces this lesson. Won't break just because they're finally willing to change. Won't soften just because they're having realization they should have had earlier. Maintains the boundary that teaches change before loss or live with permanent loss. The lesson is necessary, is teaching them that patterns have real permanent consequences that can't be undone by finally being willing to address the patterns after consequences have already destroyed the relationship. Your silence is the teacher, is proving through its permanence that being willing now doesn't restore what unwillingness destroyed then. The uncomfortable mirror. Turn, why knowing your silence hurts them reveals you're still oriented toward their pain instead of your healing. But examine why you want to know that your silence hurts them. Why their suffering from your silence matters to you. Why understanding the pain your boundary creates for them holds significance. Because if you've genuinely moved on, if you're genuinely building life without them, if you're genuinely choosing yourself, their suffering from your silence should be irrelevant to you. You shouldn't care that your silence hurts them. Shouldn't need to know they're suffering from the boundary. Shouldn't be tracking their pain or seeking information about whether your silence is affecting them. The fact that their suffering matters reveals you're still oriented toward them, still using their pain as measure of your significance, still seeking validation through their suffering from your absence, still partially hoping their suffering means they'll transform and come back worthy of you. This orientation means your silence isn't complete disengagement, is partial disengagement while still tracking their response, is boundary that's about them, about hurting them, or teaching them, or making them suffer consequences, rather than about you and your healing. Real silence, silence that serves you, is silence where you don't track their pain, don't care whether silence hurts them, don't monitor their suffering, or seek information about their response. You're silent because silence protects your healing, because contact doesn't serve you, because maintaining boundary is essential for your well-being, not because silence creates suffering for them, not because you want to hurt them or teach them or make them experience consequences. Real disengagement means their experience of your boundary is their business. Your healing in the space boundary creates is your business. Only your business should matter to you. Stop tracking their pain. Stop caring whether silence hurts them. Stop seeking validation through knowing your boundary is affecting them. Choose silence for yourself. Maintain silence for your healing. Let their suffering from the silence be theirs to manage without your monitoring or your caring about whether suffering is occurring. That's when silence becomes a real boundary instead of continued engagement through tracking their response to your boundary. The specific ways. The pain of your silence manifests in their daily experience. What hurting deeply actually looks like. Understanding how your silence affects them daily helps you see that silence is more powerful than pursuit ever was. But this understanding should confirm your choice to maintain silence, not motivate you to break it. They compose messages they never send, writing and deleting apologies, explanations, pleas that die unsent because your silence makes sending feel pointless. They write to you, daily, sometimes multiple times daily. Write messages in their phone. Long messages explaining their realization, apologizing for their patterns, begging for another chance, explaining they understand now, promising they'll change, asking if there's any possibility of restoration. The messages are genuine, are real expressions of their pain and their regret and their desperation, but the messages never get sent, get written and then deleted, get composed and then erased. Why? Because your silence makes sending feel pointless, makes them know that sending will produce no response, that your boundary is real enough that messages will be ignored or blocked, that your silence is statement that can't be argued with through messages explaining their realization. The writing and deleting is daily torment, daily experience of wanting to reach out and recognizing that reaching out is futile because your silence has made clear you're not accessible. Daily cycle of hope, maybe this message would break through, followed by recognition. No message will break through because the silence is real boundary, not negotiable through words. The unsent messages accumulate, fill their phone, fill their mind, fill their daily experience with constant reminding that they want to reach out and can't, that they have things to say and no one to say them to, because the person they need to say them to has gone silent in ways that communicate saying them would produce nothing. The accumulation of unsent messages is evidence of the pain, is proof they're destroyed by the silence, is daily demonstration that your silence is affecting them in ways your presence never affected them. They check for any sign you've broken the silence, compulsive checking that produces nothing, creating repeated disappointment that compounds the suffering. They check, compulsively, check. Check their phone constantly for messages from you. Check social media for any signs you're thinking about them. Check email for any communication. Check everywhere you might potentially reach out. The checking is automatic, happens without conscious decision, happens throughout the day. Every notification creates hope, maybe it's them. Every check produces disappointment. Silence continues. The cycle repeats. Hope, check, disappointment. Hope, check, disappointment. Over and over throughout every day. The repetition is what creates the suffering. Every check is reminder you're still silent. Every disappointment is fresh experience of the loss. Every cycle of hope and disappointment is renewed pain about your permanent absence. The checking they can't stop, despite knowing it produces nothing, is evidence of desperation, is proof the silence is destroying them, is demonstration that they're not fine, not moving on, not over it. are consumed with the silence, are desperate for it to end, are checking compulsively, because even though they know rationally the silence will continue, some part of them keeps hoping this check will be different. This time there will be message. This time the silence will have broken. The hoping, despite evidence, keeps them checking. The checking keeps producing disappointment. The disappointment keeps creating suffering. Your silence is creating this cycle, is teaching them through daily repeated experience that you're not breaking the silence, that the boundary is real, that they've lost you in ways that won't be reversed through their hoping the silence will end. Your silence occupies their thoughts more than your presence ever did. The absence is more consuming than the relationship was, proving you're more significant now than you were when they had you. The paradox that's destroying them: you occupy their thoughts more now than you did when you were present. When you were in relationship, they could take you for granted, could minimize your significance, could think about other things because you were there. But your silence makes you unignorable, makes you central to their mental experience in ways your presence never made you central. They think about you constantly. Think about you when waking, wondering if today will be day the silence breaks. Think about you throughout the day, wondering what you're doing, whether you think about them, whether you've moved on. Think about you during interactions with others, comparing everyone to you, finding everyone insufficient. Think about you before sleeping, replaying memories, imagining different outcomes, suffering from your absence. The constant thinking is evidence of the pain, is proof that your silence has made you more present in their thoughts than your presence made you. The inversion is what destroys them. Expected your absence would make you fade. Expected silence would make you less significant. Expected that you not being present would mean you not occupying their thoughts. But opposite occurred. Your absence made you more significant. Your silence made you more present. Your not being there made you occupy their thoughts more completely than being there ever did. The recognition of this inversion, that they're more consumed with you now that you're gone than they were when they had you, is devastating, is proof that losing you was the mistake, that your significance is evident now through the absence, that they took for granted someone who turns out to be unforgettable. The consuming nature of their thinking about you is the pain, is the daily experience of your silence, is proof that silence is affecting them more powerfully than presence ever affected them. Why the pain of your silence might motivate transformation, and why that transformation comes too late to benefit you. The avoidance suffering from your silence could serve purpose, but understanding what purpose it might serve helps you maintain boundaries that create the possibility without expecting the possibility to benefit you. The unbearable pain might finally drive them to therapy. Suffering that can't be managed alone sometimes creates willingness to seek professional help. Throughout relationship, they wouldn't do therapeutic work, wouldn't address attachment wounds, wouldn't pursue professional help for patterns. The wouldn't was because patterns were manageable, were sustainable. Didn't create unbearable pain because you absorbing the impact of patterns meant they didn't feel the full weight of what their patterns cost. But your silence creates unbearable pain, pain they can't manage, pain that won't diminish, pain that's consuming their daily experience, pain so intense that it might, if they're capable, drive them to finally seek help, might create willingness to pursue therapy they wouldn't pursue during relationship, might generate motivation to address wounds they've been avoiding, might make the discomfort of therapeutic work seem preferable to the unbearable pain of permanent loss your silence represents. The possibility exists. Your silence might be creating the pain that finally motivates genuine, sustained therapeutic work. Might be the crisis that drives them toward attachment specialist, toward EMDR, toward somatic therapy, toward whatever professional intervention is needed to address underlying wounds. If this happens, if unbearable pain motivates them to finally do the work, the transformation serves their future, serves whoever they encounter after they've done the work. Comes too late to serve you, comes too late to restore relationship with you. You're gone. You're not coming back because they finally did the work your absence motivated. The work benefits their future, not your present. This timing is appropriate. Is just. Is them learning that work needed to happen before loss, not after. That being willing to transform after you're gone doesn't restore you. That the transformation your silence motivates comes too late to benefit the relationship that lack of transformation destroyed. The silence forces confrontation they avoided during relationship. Can't blame you, can't minimize patterns, can't avoid responsibility when you're not there to engage with their defenses. During relationship, they could avoid confrontation, could blame you for being too demanding, could minimize their patterns as not that bad, could avoid responsibility by engaging you in arguments about whether their behavior was really problematic. Your presence allowed these defenses, allowed them to avoid confronting their patterns directly, because they could defend against confrontation through engaging you. But your silence eliminates the defenses. Can't blame you. You're not there to blame. Can't minimize patterns. Patterns cost them you. Proving patterns was serious. Can't avoid responsibility. You enforcing boundary by leaving proves patterns were their responsibility and had real consequences. Your silence forces them to sit alone with their patterns. Sit alone with what those patterns cost. Sit alone with responsibility that can't be deflected because you're not there to deflect onto. The forced confrontation is what might create transformation, might force them to acknowledge what they could avoid acknowledging during relationship, might make them face what they could avoid facing when you were there to argue with about whether facing was necessary. Your silence eliminates all the escape routes, leaves them alone with their patterns and the consequences. This aloneness with patterns and consequences is what therapy requires, is what healing requires, is confrontation that your presence was actually preventing by providing someone to argue with instead of sitting alone with the truth. Your silence forces the confrontation. If they use the confrontation for growth, if they sit with it, acknowledge it, seek help for it, transformation might occur. If they defend against the confrontation by finding new person to absorb their patterns, no transformation occurs. Either way, the confrontation your silence forces is necessary step, is them alone with their patterns in ways they've never been alone before, because they've always had someone, you or previous partners, absorbing the patterns so they didn't have to confront them. Even if they transform, the transformation comes too late. Your silence should remain because the person who finally does the work isn't owed access to the person who's leaving, motivated the work. Let's say, best case. Let's say your silence creates unbearable pain that drives them to genuine, sustained therapeutic work. Let's say they actually do it. Years of therapy with attachment specialist. EMDR for trauma. Somatic work for nervous system. Genuine transformation that creates capacity they didn't have. They become capable of reciprocal partnership, capable of sustained vulnerability, capable of honoring partner who has exceptional capacity. This transformation is real, is genuine, and is too late. Too late to restore a relationship with you. Too late to benefit the person who's leaving, motivated the transformation. You're gone. You moved on. You built life without them. You healed from what relationship cost you. By the time they're genuinely transformed, if that time comes, you're so far past them that their transformation is just interesting information about someone who's no longer relevant to your daily life. The transformation doesn't create their right to access you. Doesn't mean you should return because they finally did the work. Doesn't mean your silence should break because they've transformed. Your silence motivated the transformation. Your silence should remain permanent despite the transformation, because transformation that comes after loss doesn't restore what was lost before transformation, because the person who finally does the work isn't owed access to person whose leaving created the crisis that motivated the work. Because your silence served its purpose, created pain that might motivate transformation, and maintaining silence continues to serve purpose of protecting your healing and your freedom to build life with someone who didn't need to lose you to become capable of honoring you. Their transformation, if it occurs, serves their future relationships, serves whoever they encounter after they've done the work, doesn't restore their relationship with you. Your silence motivated potential transformation. Your silence should remain regardless of whether transformation occurred, because you're building forward, not returning to person who needed crisis of permanent loss to finally do work they should have done before losing you. The final truth about your silence. Hurting them deeply after they realized they messed up. They realized they messed up. Realized too late. Realized after you're gone. Realized with clarity. That's devastating, because clarity can't undo what lack of clarity destroyed. They see it all now. See what they lost. See what they took for granted. See what their patterns cost. See that you were exceptional and they were taking exceptional for granted. See that transformation was possible and they chose comfort over transformation. See that you deserved better and they weren't providing better. They see it all and they want to tell you, want to apologize, want to explain the realization, want to see if understanding now creates any possibility for restoration. But they can't tell you, can't reach out, can't apologize, can't explain, because you're silent, completely silent. Silent in ways that communicate you're done, you're gone, you're choosing yourself, you're not coming back. Your silence is boundary they can't cross, is wall they can't climb, is finality they can't negotiate around, and your silence hurts them deeply, hurts them more than your pursuing ever reached them, hurts them more than your words ever impacted them, hurts them because they finally want to connect exactly when connecting is impossible, hurts them because your silence proves they actually lost you in ways that destroy their fantasy you're still accessible, hurts them because your silence demonstrates your strength in ways that make them recognize what they lost. The hurting is daily, is constant, is unbearable, is them experiencing wanting what they couldn't give you at the moment when you're unavailable to receive what they're wanting to give, is cosmic justice, is appropriate consequence, is them learning through suffering what your presence couldn't teach. Your silence is teaching, teaching that boundaries are real, teaching that taking people for granted produces permanent loss, teaching that transformation must be chosen before loss, not motivated by loss. The teaching is painful, is necessary, is what might, if they're capable, finally motivate the therapeutic work and genuine transformation that your presence was actually preventing by absorbing the consequences that would have motivated transformation earlier. Whether they use the pain for growth is their choice. Most won't. Most will defend harder or find new empath. Some might transform. If transformation occurs, it comes too late to benefit you, serves their future, teaches them the lesson. Transformation before loss, or live with permanent loss motivated by transformation that comes too late. Maintain your silence, not because it hurts them, because it protects you, not to teach them, to heal yourself, not to make them suffer, to create space where you recover from what relationship cost you. Their suffering from your silence is consequence, is appropriate consequence of patterns meeting real boundary, is theirs to manage, not yours to monitor or to care about. Your healing in the space silence creates is yours to prioritize, is what silence serves, is why silence must continue regardless of their realization, regardless of their suffering, regardless of whether suffering motivates their transformation. They realized they messed up. Too late. You went silent. Permanently. Both are permanent responses to permanent patterns that destroyed the relationship. Let them have their realization and their suffering. You have your silence and your healing. Both are appropriate. Both are necessary. Only yours determines your future. Choose healing. Maintain silence. Build in the space. Silence protects. That's the life their realization arrived too late to prevent them from losing. That's the freedom your silence creates and maintains. They're hurting deeply. You're healing completely. Both are happening. Both are appropriate consequences of their patterns and your boundary. Only your healing matters to your thriving. Choose it completely. Maintain the silence that protects it. That's the answer to their suffering from your silence. Not breaking silence to relieve their pain. Maintaining silence to complete your healing. Let them hurt. You heal. Both permanent, both appropriate, both serving their purposes. Claim your healing. Protect it with your silence. Live it completely.